way she was assaulted, it bleeds of somebody who was involved in some kind of pedophilia. And I will tell you that in the Boulder area, there were a number of pedophiles who have not been completely vetted. And as an investigator, as you're gathering these facts, it's important that you go through these pedophiles and see if in any way they're attached to that crime scene. Because the killer left something and took something, and it's up to us as investigators to find those facts.
There are two men that have been talked about in the past as possible suspects. One is John Mark Carr. The other is Michael Helgott. So, Aphrodite, describe these folks.
John Mark Carr is a known pedophile who admitted to this crime when he was living in Thailand. He admitted to having been there, to having somehow taken a part in this crime, and he was exonerated to Colorado, where it was determined that his story.
He was extradited to Colorado.
He was extradited to Colorado, and for a long time it was believed that this man did have some knowledge of this murder. And he had a diary, a very extensive diary about exactly what happened to John Benet Ramsey. But ultimately, his DNA did not match the crime scene. The other person, Michael Helgott, is very interesting because in the crime scene photos that we've looked at, there's a footprint there in the dust of a high-tech sneaker. And it turns out that this Michael Helgott, who is an unsavory character that lived near John Benet, wore that type of shoe, had that high-tech sneaker, but also he had been bragging about going to be coming into a lot of money in the similar amount of the $118,000 right before John Benet was killed. He also mysteriously died, either by suicide or perhaps something more sinister, right after the DA announced, "We're focusing in on you."
You mentioned these photos. John, you brought photos that you say will prove that there was an intruder who killed John Benet. Would you mind sharing with us for the first time these images?
Yes, sir.
So let's talk through them. I know this is a crime scene, and these are the photos that you were able to acquire. So this is the outside of their house.
Yes, sir. This is the backside of where the garage is. And one of the biggest things that was brought up in the initial case by law enforcement was that it had to have been done by somebody in the house, because there was a lack of footwear impressions in the snow. Well, what's interesting is that this was taken by Boulder PD that early morning of December 26th. And as you can see, there's no snow anywhere around the perimeter of the home. Now, the front of the home had a little bit of snow, but you can see there's no snow. So when you release something out to the media that, hey, it had to be done by somebody in the house because there's no footwear, there's no snow tracks, right? That it had to be done. That's just a crazy thought, because
but the truth is that the front of the house was covered in snow. So the other side of this would be that the intruder somehow has to get past the front of the house through all of that snow to get to the back of the house where there is no snow.
This killer didn't knock on the door and say, "I'm going to walk in the front door." They or he or she cased the place to determine what is the best pathway to go in and do this and what makes the most sense. I'm not going to leave my shoe impressions everywhere. I'm not going to leave my fingerprints everywhere. I'm going to walk where people are not going to detect me.
Maybe come in through the back.
Yeah.
Right. So, next image. This is the actual room, the basement window, where if an intruder was involved, he would have come in.
Yes, sir. And if you look at this, I mean, in our line of work, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to say this is a clue, right? You have an open window, right? You have a scuff mark along the wall, and you have a suitcase there. Now, what's interesting that you can't see in this photo is that there's actually glass on the suitcase, and the suitcase is partially open. What we find out later on is that the Colorado Bureau of Investigations found that there were fibers of what John Benet was wearing inside of that suitcase.
So, trying to put her in there?
Well, I'm not willing to say 100% that that's the case, but you have to ask yourself, why are her fibers found inside of this suitcase near an open window?
Let's keep going, because it gets a bit more graphic as we go along. This is the piece that really got my attention.
Yes, sir, and Doc, you've seen a lot of the photos that I've provided.
I've seen them all. In transparency, I can't show you all the pictures that we have. It's not appropriate for a daytime audience. Some of them are extremely graphic. This one, I think we have to show.
Well, and this is important because what's happening here is that you see what a lot of people will not claim as a sophisticated knot. there is some thought that was put into making this garage. There's a piece of a paintbrush. There's this rope that is intertwined in this rope. How does a 9-year-old boy put this type of knot together to strangle his sister? It makes no sense.
So just explain to everybody what this is.
It's essentially a tool that is used to control a victim. And so by turning the garage, it's going to put pressure to the neck.
So this rope is going around John Benet's neck.
That's correct. And as you start to tighten it and tighten it, that knot gets tighter and tighter. And so the idea is that that's how you can control your victim. And that's why we have those half-moon marks, because that pressure was applied, and she ends up driving her knives into her neck.
This was the murder weapon. She died by strangulation. That's what the autopsy says.
And this last photo, which is perhaps the most graphic, but I think it's okay to show to you, is John Benet's torso.
It's her back, yes, sir.
Her back. This is an autopsy photo. Please explain what we're seeing.
So this is one of the marks that has been argued as to whether or not it's coming from a train track or from a stun gun. Those are burn marks, Doc. There are forensic pathologists that have